And as the number of houses fall, the most obvious one, well, you know, house building targets and putting pressure on social housing provision will be absolutely manifest. You can't see it across the bottom. The answer to that is an ability to work, I think, across traditional boundaries. And that just doesn't mean working with you in this room. It actually means in local authorities, sometimes the education and the social services department doing something very remarkable and actually talking to each other on occasions. You know, there's a range of large corporate issues there for local government. Great quote, if we don't succeed, we run the risk of failure, Vice President Dan Quill. I'm sure, in fact, the latest incumbent, the latest Republican nominee for VP will keep us supplied with a rich vein of humour. What I'm also saying there, and this goes to Sue's point about what's happening in England and what, you know, we're starting to think about, you know, some really radical stuff. I actually had my first mortgage off the council. Can we allow local authorities to offer mortgages to people in risk of having their homes possessed? You know, that might be a damn sight more cost effective than having to rehouse the people once their home's been repossessed. You know, we need to look at that. Can we allow local authorities to offer indemnities to help homeowners with expensive subprime mortgages and move to more affordable conventional mortgages? This nice quote there from Corbett's NLP, it's likely that house builders, landowners, including local authorities and health bodies and social housing providers will need to work collaboratively and create to remove a number of blockages caused by the credit crunch, not least of all lack of mortgages, liquidity, cost of development finance and existing mixed scheme stalling. You know, you batten down the hatches in this sort of environment, you get through it, and I think we've got to think about some of these things very seriously. In terms of taking forward the affordable housing agenda, which Matthew has kindly placed onto the WLGA, hold on, I'll get this absolutely right. We want your full support. You know, as Anna said, I sit on lots of groups, and part of my life is determined by groups. I should have shares in the Metropolitan in Llanfydd Wales, you know. But at the same time, we want to get people involved in the work that we're doing. If we're going to succeed in delivering this agenda, we need to get people on board. We need to ensure, and we're working with Jocelyn on, you know, putting together the local affordable housing delivery statements to drive our work. Let's make sure they're not just those plans. You know, many local government plans, I mean, the only way that they apply to any illumination would be to burn them. What we do need is actual, you know, living documents that we can take forward. We need to strengthen the role of housing corporately. Let me share a secret. I used to work for a district council. Some of my ex-colleagues are at the back there. When I worked in the district council, housing was king. Housing was absolutely king. You know, what the housing department did had a massive impact on the district council. Somewhere when we created the unitary authorities in 1996, we got lost. Now that may have been there may have been good reasons for that, there may have been bad reasons for it. But again, respond to the commission, to the conditions. You know, let's start to get the Director of Housing back on the corporate management team. Let's start to see housing as one of the major corporate issues. If we've got Directors of Highways up there, let's have Directors of Housing up there. And I think, you know, something we really do need to think about. Make housing a key theme for local service boards. You know, Sue's mentioned this in the report, local service boards are rolling out. Again, you know, let's respond to what's happening out there. You know, if we have an elephant sat on our doorstep, let's deal with it. I won't go into home buying and mortgage rescue, but I would say again in the English context some very interesting stuff, aligning mortgage rescue to prevent prudential borrowing in terms of local authorities. And this is, and I'm not being predatory at all, establish a housing improvement agency for Wales. We've had, working with Sue over the years, with the WLGA improvement agencies. We've got a social services improvement agency, and going back to that comment earlier on about inspection and regulation, we just scrapped the joint reviews in social services, and what we're doing is robust performance measurement. You know, let's get people like this, and I don't care where they situated, I couldn't give a damn. Let's get them to work on dissemination of best practice, research, get them working on improvement, collaboration, and that lovely new word that everybody's talking about, nudging, pushing people in the right direction. I think, you know, we need to think about those things as well. Finally, I've got a new management tool. This is a variation on SWOT analysis. This is slit our wrists time. It does feel a little bit like that, doesn't it? To stress the point, government now should be about the language of imperative. This is not a political point, well it isn't. One Wales, look, there's no shame in not achieving 241 political priorities. You know, I would have thought that when you get into this kind of climate, and we'll wait to see what happens the rest of this week, but it doesn't look good, prioritisation is the absolute key. And from the local government point of view, well, it's ever thus. It's education, it's social services, housing, and I don't even want to go into it. The role of local government mainstream budgets, the need to try and make sure that, you know, we do support those mainstream budgets. Keep that strong focus on the Wales Housing Quality Standard. You know, let's have that particular rural dimension as well. We're pressing for a rural grant at the moment in the same way that it's a deprivation grant. Need to deepen our relationship with partners and steal with pride from England. And let's use Sue's report. You know, the word seminal's been used. Well, let's use it as a seminal report. Let's use it as a turning point. You know, I think we can do that. And for the longer term, well, a bit of blue sky thinking, I suppose. I listened to Naomi Klein last night on Newsnight, and some very interesting debate she was having with Irving Sartzer, two different sides of the political spectrum. But, you know, we've been here before. We have been here before. You know, George Bush talked about the ownership society, Margaret Thatcher talked about property owning democracies. Well, you know, this approach has driven us into economic crisis twice now within 20 years. Are we going to go build it back up again and do the same again? You know, I don't know. Bigger people at work than myself, but do we just move from that bubble to bubble? Can we reform a post-toxic mortgage market? A friend of mine, my daughter, came to see me the other night, and there's a 125% mortgage from the former Northern Rock. You know, how irresponsible was that? And, you know, again, I think we've got to think about that. Do we agree with socialism for the rich? I mean, George Bush is nationalising so much at the moment, you know, it is socialism for the rich. And can we learn from the European experience? I finally say that, you know, in all this doom and gloom, I think, you know, keep that focus on imperative, keep that focus on the absolute priorities. I think in local government, I think what I'm saying, my old colleague, Councillor Aldridge from Flintshire would say, we're up for it. And I think, you know, we need to be up for it. You know, we've got that community leadership role. We are there very close to communities across Wales, from Wrexham to Blaenau Gwent, from Torfaen to Anglesey, and I think we need to, you know, really keep a focus on this issue, prioritise and bring it to the fore. There's one old gent, of course, who is smiling at the moment, and as a result of that, you know, he can now finally say, where's it back? Just moves forward. I told you so. Thanks very much.